This is Backfire.
Hey, welcome to another edition of Backfire this morning, or this afternoon, or whatever time you're listening, with John Stanberry and Franklin Chansey.
Good morning.
Good day.
Good day. Yeah.
How's your week been?
Hot.
It is
hot.
Hot.
It's not the best day to be running around in a suit outside, that's for sure.
Well, Franklin, I'm going to give you the first opportunity. What would you like to talk about this morning?
Well, I did see that the Republican primary got a lot more interesting yesterday with Donald Trump's diving into the race. I think that everybody's going to agree that that's going to make it more entertaining.
Actually, I was looking at some of my emails from some of the conservative groups, and one of them said some of the Twitter replies were really funny. One of them had said that they thought he was going to hold another celebrity apprentice to pick all of his cabinet secretaries, which I thought was pretty funny. But this is a conservative Republican group, but they said we've got to give credit where it's due. Said the DNC, Democratic National Committee, probably had the funniest and snarkiest reply. They put a dead serious reply out that they were glad someone of substance who would bring seriousness to the race had entered the fray. I mean, it really was a funny, snarky comment from the DNC.
I can't wait for him to be in a debate.
I was watching a story this
debate.
Well, but there's a push now amongst several fairly prominent Republicans for them to open the debate back up for everybody to be on it.
Well, now I think they're talking about a two-tier, two-night type debate where everybody's in. The problem is I don't think it's fair, and I'm not defending Fox News. I think CNN is part of this as well. I don't think it's fair for people to say, oh, they're being bad. Look, as many people as they got, they do have the problem of logistics. How do you put that many people on stage for a reasonable period of time and get questions answered? So I don't think the criticism of the news companies is really fair. I will say, if anybody wants to Google this, I watched Carly Fiorina on The View the other day, and I thought she did a wonderful job handling what would be considered at least not a home crowd. But they asked her about that, and her concentration was more on basic competition, which as a business person she believes in. She said, look, I'm focused on getting in the top 10, so I make it to the debate.
Well, right now she wouldn't be in the top 10. So,
she's right on the cusp.
So,
But you got to realize, now don't you think Trump would be an interesting negotiator with, China?
Well, actually, and don't get me wrong, I'm not endorsing Carly Fiorina, but that was one of her points. She's actually sat down with more world leaders than anyone else in the race outside of Hillary Clinton. She sat down with Putin. She sat down with the Chinese. She sat down with Benjamin Netanyahu. So you've got other business people in it. My problem with Trump is I don't take him seriously. I don't think he's seriously in it. I think he's a bomb thrower.
I honestly think that he's going to be a problem for, not that he has a chance of winning, I don't believe he does. I think he's going to be a problem for other Republican candidates because they're going to be forced to answer questions about bombs that he's thrown out into the...
See, the problem with him is he says some things that are actually very good. And he could actually make some good points, but they're interspersed among Molotov cocktails that burn everybody around. And that's the problem.
Well, you like his comments about building a wall and things like that, don't you?
I do, but that's my point. He's not
presumably
serious.
He doesn't like the comments that the Mexican government is sending their rapists to America. That's not going to help our relationships.
Well, the problem, actually, Franklin, that probably is somewhat true because
the truth is the truth.
One of the problems is there's 120.
I hope he continues to make that point then, and I hope that all the Republican
candidates
have
to. Well, you may not hope that because the public sentiment is actually more on his side.
I will wager you that there won't be many Republican candidates who jump up and say we agree with him.
Well, the public tends to agree with him on that.
Maybe you'll elect him then.
I think the public.
Interestingly enough,
I think
the last time he said he was going to run, he said he would make Oprah his running mate.
I don't think she'll accept.
What do you think? How do you think he would handle terrorism?
Ineptly.
I disagree.
I mean, he doesn't have any background in dealing with those issues at all.
Neither did Obama. But I guess you're right.
I bet he wouldn't let him
Actually,
lose.
Franklin, I'll have to concede that to you. Obama had no experience, and he handled it ineptly.
Well,
thanks for that. Thanks for pointing that out.
Yes, like those political veterans who preceded Obama. They did such a great
Well, guess
job.
what, Franklin? With them, we captured people and got intelligence out of them instead of killing them. And we weren't killing U.S. citizens, which apparently Obama has no problem with.
I believe Trump would do a better job blindfolded and
I think you guys should get out there on the bandwagon early. I think you should jump right on there.
I wish we had Trump running against Obama. That would have been an interesting one. I wish it had.
I think
done
you guys need to live out your dream and join the Trump bandwagon right now.
I'd hate to think that I only had one candidate running.
Well, actually, Bernie Sanders is starting to scare him a little bit. In New Hampshire, he's actually coming up on Hillary in the polls. So there's actually some concern up there about him. You know, here's something I find funny. I'll bring this down to a local level. Clay Bennett, the cartoonist down at the Times Free Press. Look, I don't mind cartoonists. You know, they're supposed to be satire, but they ought to try to have a little decency and a little balance in them. I don't see that in Bennett. I also see some really ugly personal attacks on people. But here's my real pet peeve. He had one on Jeb the other day. He's had one on Cruz. He's had one on Rubio. Bernie Sanders wrote a paper in early 70s where he said that he believed women fantasized about being gang raped. And apparently Clay Bennett at the Times Free Press doesn't think that's open for satire. That's the kind of thing that bothers me. So I'll say this, you know, Mr. Bennett, you want to show me that you're really an issue-oriented guy and a principle-oriented guy, then tear into the Democrats who screw up and say ridiculous things. He never.
Cartoonist's job is to be fair and balanced. I think by nature they have opinions. That's what they're doing.
I want him to have opinions. None of his opinions.
He doesn't have to be balanced. He's not a journalist.
Franklin, he should be balanced. I mean, look, let me give you an example.
He should be whatever he wants to write about.
Bloom County, I'm not saying I'm just saying if he was a decent human being, I certainly think advocating that women fantasize about being gang raped deserves some negative attention.
Has Clay Bennett issued some statement about that topic?
No, my point is he's issued a statement about every Republican but no Democrat. And he attacks Republicans personally. And that's insulting.
Okay.
So, Mr. Bennett, you want to show me you actually care about an issue? Then do a cartoon on Bernie Sanders thinking that women fantasize about being gang raped.
I don't think the test is going to be whether John thinks Clay Bennett ought to write a cartoon.
Bloom County was a wonderful cartoon. The creator is, from what I understand, much more of a left of center Democrat. But you know what? He skewered everybody. If a Democrat screwed up, if a liberal screwed up, he skewered them too. And that's a valuable contribution to society. Through comedy, you can make some really strong points, but you ought to make those points wherever they show up, not just on one side of the political spectrum. And the Times Free Press, who claims that they have these two separate editorial pages, if Clay Bennett is not able to stray over onto the other side of the aisle, then they ought to hire a conservative cartoonist.
Clay Bennett's cartoons appear on the left side of those
He's the only
pages.
Cartoonist they employ, was my point, Franklin. They claim that they have two editorial boards.
But it's not that they don't run cartoons.
No
there's a cartoon on the Republican side, the right side of that editorial page this morning by somebody else. So what? The paper is the one running it.
I find him offensive in the personal attacks that he makes, and I find it hypocritical of him. He makes these attacks and claims Republicans don't, like, for example, Republicans don't care about women. Really? Bernie Sanders? Gang rape? And you're going to criticize the Republicans?
I thought we were talking about a president here, and now we got into the cartoons.
We were.
It's amazing. Out of this, how many candidates do we have running for president right now?
You know what the number is?
Officially, there's only like 10 or 11, but it's probably 18 or 19.
It's a huge number.
16, I think, is what I'm looking at here. But they were talking about all the different announcements. Ben Carson's announcement, Jeb Bush's announcements, Ted Cruz's announcement.
I like Ben Carson. I didn't realize this last week. I was reading a thing. His campaign manager, his finance guy, he had 3 top people resign last month.
Ben Carson did?
Yeah, I think that's just more a product of he's not a politician.
Jeb Bush replaced his top campaign guy 2 weeks ago.
There's a difference in replacing them and them leaving you.
Carly
Fiorina.
Fiorina, is that how you pronounce it? Lindsey Graham, Mike Huckabee, George Pataki, Ron Paul, Rick Perry.
Yeah, that was an interesting one, too. You had, I think it was Associated Press reporters and a New York Times reporter talked about how bad the image was of Rick Perry's announcement because he had 2 sweaty, bearded security guards standing beside him. Apparently, they didn't recognize Marcus Luttrell, the lone survivor Navy SEAL, who is a close family friend of the Perrys and who really, I think, New York Times reporter should have probably known.
Who do you think the front runner is on the Republican side right now?
You know, that all depends on what you're looking at. If you're looking at cash, although Jeb has not raised as much cash as they expected, he still raised a lot of cash.
Close to $90 million.
Yeah. I think, to be honest, I think the one that's a front runner from the standpoint of who do the Democrats probably fear the most, it's probably Marco Rubio. When you look at what the New York Times tried to do to him last week, which is really amazing. The reporter said he bought a $80,000 luxury speedboat. Well, it turns out to be a fishing boat that almost everybody in Florida on coastal waters, either owns or wants to own. And it was written by a New York Times reporter who lives in a $1.4 million apartment.
You know, Marco Rubio, he keeps things stirred up. I like to listen to him speak.
He's an excellent speaker. He has good roots. He has a good story. And I think when you see the attacks that he's weathering, it tells you that the Democrats are concerned about him.
I would agree that he's the best speaker in the bunch.
Probably the best candidate.
Well, now, Scott Walker has done an excellent job speaking. Scott Walker's a good speaker, and that's been interesting because originally that was the complaint, that Scott Walker wasn't going to be a good speaker. He wasn't inspiring. Well, he came out and has really whipped crowds up, and I think that's probably your 3, Walker and Bush and Rubio.
Mm-hmm.
I would actually agree that that's the top tier right now.
I think you're going to see.
I tell you what I think is possible to happen in the Republican nominating process, which I think will be really interesting. I think it's entirely possible that in the first 3 races, Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, that you have a different winner in each one of those. And that really throws things up into the air because those candidates aren't going to drop out very quickly if that happens. And you could end up going to the 4th or 5th primary with 7 or 8 solidly funded candidates still in the race, and that's really almost unprecedented for the last 40 years.
Well, that's what you get when you have a deep bench full of lots of talent instead of old has-beens.
Well, we'll see if that big bench has any new ideas.
One thing Trump will do, he is going to keep everyone interested.
Well, what's interesting
is that it's real boring.
I will say the one thing he said yesterday, which was probably true, is that he's the candidate who does not have to go out and raise money.
That
makes a difference.
Look, I'm not trying to pick on him, but I don't know if I believe that or not. Trump Tower, the casino went broke. He's got, does he have a lot of money and a lot of interest, and is he good at showing that off? Sure, but there's a lot of spotty business there too. Now, part of it is that he's a risk taker, and when you're a risk taker, you win some, you lose some.
The one thing I'm not criticizing him about is the fact that he's made a lot of money and he's had a lot of.
Well, they'll kick you out of the Democrat Party if you don't criticize people for making a lot of money.
That's not true.
The president says they're the lottery winners in life. That was his quote from a week or so ago. He said it's time for the lottery winners in life to pay their fair share. Yeah. Now, let me ask you, Franklin, about that. Is Bill Gates a lottery winner in life? Did he just luck into that?
I think that there are 1 million people in the world who have worked just as hard as Bill Gates and who also had wonderful ideas. And there are lots of people like that.
Well,
out
let's
there.
make them all billionaires then.
That's what I'm saying. That's the lottery aspect of it. Everything lined up for this individual, for his creativity and his ideas to work out and produce that result. I don't think Bill Gates would be offended.
Everything lined up. So
Bill Gates wouldn't be
didn't
offended by that
persevere.
comment.
Bill Gates didn't push hard. Bill
I didn't
Gates
say
didn't
that
take
at all.
risks.
I didn't say that at all.
Franklin, here's the problem with
John. What I would say is that Bill Gates wouldn't be offended by that comment. I don't know why.
That's because he's so rich. He's a liberal, and I told my daughter that this past week. Here's the problem with all these liberal policies. The really, really poor people are okay with it because it doesn't hurt them. The really, really rich people are so rich, it doesn't hurt them. It's all us people in the middle, the working class, middle class, that get hammered by these policies. So when you get a Bill Gates,
absolutely
when
getting
Bill
hammered,
well,
but
here's
it's
the
not
deal.
by liberal policies. It's by Republican
Franklin, your
economic
guy's been in
policy.
charge for 6 years,
And we haven't been
this
able to
is his
reverse
economy.
those.
This is his economy.
We haven't been able
he
to reverse
owns
those policies.
this economy, and it's the worst economy in probably 50 years. Congratulations,
John,
liberals.
You can't even remotely
Franklin,
begin
can
to
you not
justify that
admit
statement.
that the guy's been in office?
John, can you not admit that the economy is growing jobs, that we've had 40 or 50 consecutive months of positive job growth? Can you not admit that it's been the greatest stock market in the history of the last 100 years?
Yeah, all the Wall Street people made a lot of money. A lot of them gave it to Hillary.
Yes, and that's exactly the people that for 40 years your party has said we needed to help out because that was going to benefit
Actually,
everybody
Franklin,
else.
It's your party that's been helped. But just so, I'm glad you brought that up. Let me just read this to you. In 2008, the number of full-time workers was 118 million. Today, it's 117 million. The workforce participation rate was 65.9%. Today, it's 62.8%. Home ownership was 67.5%. Today, it's 65%. Median income was $58,644. Today, it's $51,000. Poverty was 13.2%. Today, it's 15%. People on food stamps, 28.2 million. Today, 47.6 million.
Ta-da-da.
Debt to GDP ratio, 64.8%. Today, 101%. Congratulations.
What
That's
year
the
was that?
Obama
What year was
economy.
that?
2008 when he took over. 2008 when he Franklin, are you going to deny he's been president since 2008 now?
I'm going to deny that last statistic that you raised. Most of those are accurate, though.
Well, that's not a great economy. That's a disaster 6 years in the making.
Except that the trend line for that 6 years has been going up, not down.
It still hadn't gotten back to where it was when he took it. It's a disaster. It's the worst recovery in the history of
point
the
there
country.
that you jump over is that's the economy he inherited. Do you deny
and he
that?
made it worse.
No, he didn't make it worse.
Franklin,
He
staved
inherited.
off
No
a-
other
He
recession-
staved off a disaster.
no other recession has been this long. No other recession. The you were bragging just a few months ago about the economy.
What has he
and
done to save
in the first
anything?
quarter, it actually contracted.
Franklin, what has he done to save anything? Tell me what he's done.
You have completely forgotten what happened in the 6 months before he took office.
Well,
The economy fell into the toilet.
Yes, like it has before.
No,
and it's always come back faster.
it has not come back. It has
has.
not
This is
done
the
that
worst
before.
recession
It was
ever.
the deepest recession.
All right, let's talk about what
since
he's
the
done.
Great Depression.
Let's talk about what he's done. We've got the clunkers. What was it? The cash for
Cash
clunkers?
for clunkers, which decimated the used car business,
That's right.
wasted taxpayer money, and increased the cost of
What
cars.
else has he done, John? What's some other things he's done?
He's done all kinds of. We never got our money back from GM that he claimed we were going to get. We lost money on that every step of the way. Ford actually ended up better than the bailout.
All of the analysis shows that we made money on the bailout.
We did
deal.
not. When you take into effect
Yes.
all the backroom tax
No,
deals they
no,
gave them,
no.
Franklin, they waived off hundreds of millions
John,
in taxes.
you can say whatever you want, but the paybacks were higher
They
than
were
the
not,
expenditure.
Franklin. You're wrong about that,
That
and you
is
know it.
truth.
What about the people that were holding stock in
Oh,
GM?
they all just got wiped out. What about the retirees that he
No,
wiped?
they didn't all
because,
get wiped
No, you're
out.
right. The union buddies didn't, but the non-union
No,
people
they
got
didn't all
wiped out
get wiped
because this
out.
president likes picking winners and losers.
They did not all get wiped out.
The non-union people did. Tell the AC Delco people that, Franklin.
For some strange
Discuss
reason,
AC Delco.
For some strange reason, you think that it would have been better for
Discuss
them
AC
for the company to be broken
No,
up.
I
and
think it
destroyed.
would have been legal.
Oh, that would have been
That was
perfect.
the law.
It
Aren't
was
you an
legal.
attorney?
It was
Don't you
legal.
No, it wasn't. A judge okayed what the president did, which was actually in violation of federal bankruptcy laws.
The judge And
Okay,
the courts
because-
found that it were legal,
No,
John.
the
You
judge
don't
ruled
like it.
he would allow it. But
The
it
fact
was
that
not
you
the
don't
normal,
like it doesn't make it
Franklin,
illegal,
was
John.
it the normal bankruptcy rules?
Yes.
No, it was not, Franklin.
Yes.
The bondholders go to
Yes.
the front of the line in a bankruptcy.
Yes,
And he
John.
subordinated, but he
John.
only subordinated the non-union
John.
bondholders.
John,
Franklin,
John,
the man
John,
is a
the
judge,
plan
and you
was
know it.
approved. It was legal.
You know, that's kind of like what's the definition of is.
No,
and
it's
that's
not
the problem.
what the definition is. Listen very carefully. It was legal.
Because one federal judge said so.
It got appealed. It was upheld.
Well-
Not one federal judge.
Well, Franklin, I tell you what, tell the Supreme Court that all this works that way when the president, on the front end of decisions, effectively is out threatening the Supreme Court in public. This is the most
president doesn't
autocratic,
threaten the
dictatorial
Supreme Court.
president we've ever had, and we are on the cusp of losing control of our country.
What's going on with Obamacare right now?
Well, it's a disaster.
But
We-
it's a disaster. I know that. But what's going on with the judge's decisions?
Sometime in the next 2 weeks, we'll get a decision.
Guess what? The feds have lost track of $2.8 billion in Obamacare subsidies. New report from their auditor. CMS had no internal controls to make sure, A, that the correct payment was going, and B, that it was going to the correct person. So they don't know whether they sent the right amount to the right person. $2.8 billion has been lost in these subsidies.
I don't know what he's talking about.
Well,
so.
that's news off the press this morning. I saw that too.
But, you know, government works well because these subsidies that $2.8 billion is lost, there's only a few agencies in charge of overseeing it. Let's see. It's the Center for Consumer Information, Insurance Oversight, Office of Financial Management, Office of the Actuary, Office of Information Systems. Hey, they probably needed 6 or 8 more government agencies and maybe they wouldn't have lost
Go have
close
that
to $3
Go have that
billion.
conversation with the people who are alive right now because of Obamacare, and tell them how awful it's been.
Franklin, Obamacare doesn't give any coverage to people. It doesn't give any service to people. They get coverage with no doctor. That's why people all over the country are waiting in line.
People all over this country who are getting medical services right now that they were being denied before.
I don't think anybody was being denied
That's
medical
not true.
services before. I think anybody that needed medical service walked into the hospital and got it.
They did.
That's not true.
It is true.
It
Franklin.
is true.
It's not true
Then
because
show
the
me one
hospital
example
can
of
only
somebody
deal
died.
with an emergency service. They don't provide any other care. So if you walk in needing chemotherapy, you don't get it. If you walk in needing to see an oncologist, you don't get it.
That's not
if there's
true,
an immediate
Franklin.
emergency,
That's not
there's a
true.
federal law that requires them to provide those services.
I think there was people that were providing it.
The drug companies were providing free drugs for them. Doctors were
John,
providing
if
free
you
service
think
to them.
we went
Hospitals-
through all this because everything was hunky-dory,
We went through all of this so a bunch of bureaucrats could take control of 1/6 of the economy. That's what we went through this for.
What's going on with the nuclear talks right now?
we're coming up on the last couple of weeks of them. We'll know in the next few weeks what the outlines of the final deal are.
You think?
Well, the watchdog group out of the UN says that while these talks have gone on, Iran has increased their nuclear stockpile by over 20%. So while Nero fiddled, while Obama
their
Nero
nuclear
fiddled,
stockpile.
yes, their stockpile of fissionable material. So in other words, while these talks have been going on, they've been moving closer and closer to having enough material to build a bomb.
I called you out on that one.
That's actually from the UN, Franklin. Maybe you ought to read a little bit more often.
Thank you, John. I'll do that.
CNN doesn't tell these things. I'm sorry, Franklin. Well, the nuclear dream's going to fizzle, I believe, isn't it?
I don't know what it's going to do. You know, here's what he's done. He's backed us up against a wall. You know, I don't. They're closer and they're probably within a month of building a nuclear bomb if we turned them loose. So what he's done
There's
is
not
he's
a shred of evidence to support that.
Franklin,
statement.
the
you just made that up.
No, I didn't.
You made that up.
The president's own people said that at the end of the 10-year period, when all the sanctions come off and all the restrictions come off, they will be within 3 months of a nuclear bomb. That's the president's own words. So this 10-year deal that he's working on,
that's not accurate, John.
that's what they said from the White
No,
House,
what
Franklin.
they've said is doing nothing except leaving the sanctions in place had them within 3 months of building a bomb.
And what they said...
And this deal that we've put together has extended that out to at least
10 years. And at the end of 10 years, they'll be 3 months from a bomb, which is exactly what I said, and you said wasn't true. Thanks for corroborating my statement.
No, John, it's typical. You're mixing
Franklin,
up this.
At the end of the 10 years, are they going to be 3 months or 6 months away?
They're going to be a year away at the end of the 10 years.
The president's own people said they will be 2
John.
to 3 months away.
Now,
Once
who's not
again,
reading?
you need to read what the president puts out because
I
that's,
can
his
read,
own,
John.
that's his own information.
Unfortunately, what I'm reading isn't on a kindergarten level, which is where you're going
Franklin,
right now.
yeah, because I'm reading the White House statements. You're right, it is kindergarten level.
Oh, golly. What's going on with Bill and Hillary? They're contradicting each other now. Their lies are starting to cross.
What do you mean?
Well, you know, Hillary says that with her emails on Benghazi and so forth, that, you know, she had a lot of private emails going to her husband back and forth. Well, all of a sudden, Bill came out and said that he only sent 2 or 3 emails in his whole life.
Well, that's old. The new thing this week is, surprise, surprise, there's about 60 or more emails to and from Hillary and Sidney Blumenthal, the Democrat hitman, basically, that even the Obama administration wouldn't allow to work for the State Department, that didn't get turned over to the Benghazi committee. Now, I will say this. We don't know who did it. We don't know whether Hillary didn't give it to the State Department or the State Department didn't give it to the committee. But once again, we've got all these statements on the record that everything was turned over. Turns out it wasn't. Oh, by the way, the IRS has just now been given another court order from a judge saying that they are being ridiculous in their excuses for why they can't turn over 6,400 new Lois Lerner emails that have been rediscovered.
The foundation's doing well. The Clinton Foundation is doing well, I understand.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Okay. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson. We'll be right back after this.
You are listening to WOOP-LP, Cleveland, Tennessee. WOOP FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.
Check into cash.
The cash you need is closer than you think.
Get an auto title loan today for up to $2,500 at Check Into Cash.
You drive home with the cash in your pocket.
Visit Check Into Cash for an auto title loan today, or get a payday advance for up to $425. Call toll-free 877-262-CASH. Title loan amount determined by value of car and ability to repay. Borrowers often use payday advances over a period of months, which can be expensive. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
Did you know that U.S. Money Shops cashes all checks, even the ones most check cashers reject? Tax refund checks, government checks, payroll checks, and many more. And when you cash a check with U.S. Money Shops, we'll give you 10% off your next purchase. At U.S. Money Shops, we have everything you need at a fraction of regular retail. So stop by one of our 11 locations or visit us online at usmoneyshops.com.
Buy or sell or coin today, the better way at U.S. Money Shops.
Some restrictions may apply. See store for details.
If you need a little green, Lending Frog is making deals. He'll lend you cash on any kind of wheels. Borrow just a little, or you can borrow big. Lending Frog is a new financial gig. It's hip to hop into cash. LendingFrog.com is making a splash. Dig it, dig it. Dig it, dig it.
Saturday, Saturday, Saturday. Cleveland Speedway, it's races. Saturday, Saturday, Saturday. The Cleveland Speedway in Cleveland, Tennessee. Races start at 7 o'clock. For tickets or information, call 421-3695. That's 421-3695. Listen to win a family 4-pack on Whoop Radio Friday at 4 o'clock. It's the Cleveland Speedway this Saturday. Go to the races, Vegas, Cleveland Speedway, the racing station.
Every morning, the sun greets you, as reliable as a train heating and cooling system. Well, almost. Because no matter the temperature outside, it's always perfect inside. And when the sun calls it a day, a train system is there to say goodnight. Heating, cooling, and beyond.
Need to perfect the temperature in your home? Call the Train Comfort Specialist at Mechanical Systems, 336-5739. High-quality service and installation for more than 30 years.
It's hard to stop a train.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson on Whoop FM. Call 423-614-5553 to join in on the conversation. Now, back to Backfire.
All right, welcome back. Our phone lines are open if you want to give us a call, 614-5553. NAACP leader is not black. She's white. We're going to play you something. Put on your headsets.
You were left on our doorstep, but we raised you like you were one of us.
You mean I'm going to stay this color?
All right, we've got a phone call. Go ahead, caller. You're live.
This is Commissioner Charlotte Peak.
Hello, Miss Charlotte Peak.
How are you, Charlotte?
I'm good. How are y'all?
Good. We're good.
Hey, Charlotte, thanks for voting no on the tax increase.
No, we do not need it. There was no reason to vote for it this year.
Well, how are you going to get Lake Forest School built? That's what Tom Cry wants to know.
We'll have the money next year for the bond payment. If we miraculously came up with money to give the firemen one of the biggest salary increases in Bradley County history, then surely we can come up with $1.2 million for a bond payment. And the first million's on the school anyway. And anybody that knows anything about construction, it'll be till next May or June before they need any money from us whatsoever. So why raise taxes this year when you don't even have to have it in the budget this year?
What about the idea of going ahead and doing it now and taking those funds, designating them for a year to pay down debt service?
10 cents. I just don't see the purpose. I don't see the purpose of burdening our taxpayers at this time. And I think our number one priority is to our constituents, and the majority of my constituents are totally against it. And
well, Charlotte, in that regard, even though, that's an idea I've mentioned if you were going to have a tax increase, but as I understand it, the proponents of this tax increase were not willing to lock that down in the actual proposal and guarantee that money was going to debt, were they?
Exactly. They said a portion go to the school, and then the rest go to general
fund, which means they're going to blow it and grow the government.
But the opponents could have offered an amendment to that.
As I understand, I think they did, and amendments were voted down.
Is that correct, Charlotte?
That night they didn't do any amendments that they have in the past.
Hey, Charlotte, you ever heard anybody refer to good credit, bad credit? The difference?
Yes.
What is the bad credit is investing in something that doesn't pay you anything back, right?
I would say so.
Good credit is investing in something that you'll get a return from, right?
Okay.
Why don't we put some money down here in our industrial park that'll create a lot of money for us in the future to help build a school?
Well, I think that's what they're looking at, too. That's what some of that money was alluded to going to, but they haven't asked us for anything yet. That's not time either. I just hate, and I'll be honest, I can't even count how many properties I have in the city. So, and I'll go on a rabbit trail real quick, and I'll come right back to it and sum it up. But I get so sick and tired of hearing these commissioners that say, well, we pay city and county taxes and blah, blah, blah. I pay 10 times more than they pay because of all the properties I have in the city. So that has no bearing on any of our decisions whatsoever. That just, and I just had to throw that out there. That is the number one pet peeve of mine when they always throw that out there. But I do have quite a bit of properties in the city, and 10 cents on me, we added it up the other day. That will cost me $3,500 to $4,000 extra a year. The 10 cents. Everybody's like, oh, 10 cents is nothing. 10 cents on 100. Whoop-de-doo. You're going to have $25 on your $100,000 appraisal. Well, come and sit at my office and write all the checks that you're going to write next year and see how much all your payments go up on your escrow account. and then tell me 10 cents is nothing.
Well, in Charlotte, if you have rental property, while you may have to pay that next year, what are you eventually going to do to your renters?
I'll have to go up on them eventually, but I can't right now.
Right.
Because you can't go up on tenants that you just got in there either.
Right. So you're gonna get hurt immediately, but eventually this will trickle down to the renters as well, who are some of the hardest hit people.
Charlotte, are you saying that next year, when this comes back up, that then you would support it, or are you just not supporting it this year?
If we could not find the funding, but 10 cents is astronomical. They don't need the 10 cents. They're getting an extra 2 just to put back in the general fund. I understand. And hey, if we've got all day, I'll just tell you about Lake Forest School. That is a maintenance disaster. There's nothing really wrong with the school. Yeah, it was built on a swamp, but I went to school there when I was little, and when it rained, my parents had enough sense to tell me, wear your rain boots. We're not going to a beauty pageant at school. Wear a proper clothing. Put your rain jacket on. Take you a umbrella. Put your rain boots on. We didn't go to win a beauty contest when we went to school. We went to school to learn, so we dressed appropriately. But the sidewalks and stuff, the maintenance that they've done over the years, and I'm not faulting any one person, I'm just saying in general, you always try to get everything as cheap as you can get it, and that's what they did. They've got people over there that didn't do the slopes correctly on their sidewalks. They got sidewalks pouring water into the school when it rains.
It's been going on for 40 years.
Well, what she's saying is the problem is it was mismanaged, misbuilt, and a lot of this is correct. And frankly, let me interject a little bit. One of the things what Charlotte's, I think, getting at, because I've talked to several other commissioners as well, the school system is going to put the first $1 million up when they start the project. Now, they're not planning on starting the project for about a year. They're going to pay the first $1 million. By the time the county has to put money towards it, we think that with 2 to 3% growth in the revenue, we will have paid the debt down enough that we will have, with the current tax structure, enough money to do the bond, to do the school. So the point here is they're using the school as, this is why we need a 10-cent increase, when if they just did nothing, we will probably have the money for the school anyway. And even if you didn't have it, you could raise this tax next year to generate it. So
I'm not being critical at this point. I'm asking questions about, I don't have a problem with people deciding they're not going to support this tax increase. What I think is that each commissioner who does that needs to come forward and say, here's my proposal for how we deal with this school issue, so that people can evaluate what the alternatives really are. And I'm not sure that the opponents of this have done a particularly good job of explaining and advocating what their views are. Now, John, I understand what you're saying, but I think that's what they need to come forward and say. I'm opposed to it because I think we're going to have enough money in the budget.
Well, they've actually said that, Franklin. Okay. One of our problems is the media in this town. The media in this town covers things the way they want to cover it. They either don't understand it or don't want to cover the other side, because all of these arguments have been put out there. And the fact that the argument has been allowed to settle that we have to do this in order to fund the school is just not true. We don't need that much money to fund the school. The increase is too high.
Well, I want to get back to my question about good credit, bad credit. Why not put money towards something that'll make money, instead of putting money all these places that don't make money?
Well, let me give you an example of something that's going on right now. You've heard them talk about 2% increase for the county employees.
Yes.
Well, first off, this is about a 6% increase in the taxes. So everybody's worried about a 2% increase to the county employees. Who's worried about the 6% increase in the tax rate to the taxpayer? Because that's what 10 cents is. It's about a 6% increase on the taxpayer. And secondly, about 5 or 6 years ago, the commission did a study, and they actually went in and looked at all the different pay levels in the county. And they identified who was being paid below really the grade, who was at the grade, and who was above the grade. And the point of that study was to say, for example, deputies. Deputies are not paid enough. They need to be brought up. But let's say some boss at the higher level, he's paid pretty well, so he doesn't need to be brought up. Well, what have we done over the last 4 or 5 years? Unfortunately, the county mayor ignored that study, and everybody got a 2% across the board pay raise. Well, if you're making $70,000, especially during the economic downturn that we have. Do you need a 2% pay raise? But a deputy who's making 28%, he does need a pay raise. So we had a study commissioned. We spent money to do it. We know what pay grades were too low and what pay grades were actually maybe even too high. But instead of actually targeting the money where it was actually needed, we've given everybody across the board raise. Things like that could have saved enough money that we could have put money down here in the industrial park. But we're growing government. That's all we're doing. We're growing bigger government.
Well, they commend the sheriff's department. They actually went, Eric went within his own department and redistributed his own money and gave all of his guys raises.
She's right. Eric did do that in his department, but as a countywide, the mayor has always done this 2% across the board. Well, that doesn't make sense. Eric fixed it on his own.
Yes, he did. He did without a tax increase and without asking any more money.
Right.
Now, as far as in the future, if I would ever vote for a tax increase, they'd have to have a very good reason and show me how we're not going to fund something that they want to fund. Last year we brought in a 10% growth increase. We predicted 2% is what was budgeted for. This year I think they're wanting to do a 4% potential growth increase.
Well,
if we stay true to last year's 10%, we're going to have it in there next year.
We had a 10% growth last year?
I think that's what I heard yesterday in finance.
What'd we do with all that money?
Beats me.
Well, Charlotte, is this year's budget a higher budget than last year's?
I think so.
Was last year's higher than the year before?
Don't know.
Well, from what I understand, they've all been increased budgets. Governor Haslam, who is not a raving conservative, a lot of conservatives don't even think he's very conservative, has actually cut the size of state government. And he didn't cut it by firing people. They still right now got buyout offers out there for people to retire early. They had unfilled positions that they just said, look, this has been unfilled for a year. Obviously, the government's operating without this position filled. We're going to eliminate that position. The state budget is lower today than it was 4 years ago. So I've given up on asking this commission to cut something, but could we at least hold it flat?
Yeah, that would be nice if you didn't have departments asking for increases for this and that. But I would have to say the departments in a whole this year, they all just about maintained the same budget as their previous years. So this would have been one of the easiest budgets from what I've been told if we did not have to find the money for firemen. So
well, why don't we do what John suggested last week? Let's merge our fire departments again and merge our police departments. We fixed two problems that way.
You got too many that are anti-city.
Too many that are anti-city.
Anti-city, but you know what? I think that the majority, and no offense, Franklin, but I think the majority of our commissioners are Democrats in disguise. They just didn't want to run on a Democratic ticket. But
well, I can tell you they've not been in any of the meetings.
You just made a good point, Charlotte.
Well, let me give you another great example, and this is fussing at the city a little bit. Mike Smith, a few months ago, announced that he had worked out an agreement to collect the taxes for the city of Charleston. Now, as I understand it, that's working out wonderful for both of them. Now, it doesn't save Mike any money. It saves the taxpayer money. It saves the city of Charleston residents money. And I think Mike did that purely as a, hey, I believe in less obtrusive government. And here's something I can do that won't cost me anything, won't cost the county taxpayer anything, but will save some of the people in Charleston, for example, some money. He worked that out, but he can't work it out with the city of Cleveland. Now think about that. He can work it out with the city of Charleston, make it work. It works fine, but he can't work it out with the city of Cleveland. So the city of Cleveland residents are not saving money they could be saving.
Hey, Mike, come down and let's talk about it.
Well, he's talked about it several times.
Well, let's talk about it on the air.
He did try to do that for the city.
You know, we tried to combine the planning departments, and Charlotte, you're a good one to ask about this. They both work under the state of Tennessee building codes. How hard could it have possibly been to have had one planning department that would have inspected buildings in the county and the city? Would that have been an overwhelmingly difficult task?
I don't think so. Hamilton County and the city of Cleveland are actually both in the same building. I think they do separate inspections, but Chattanooga and Hamilton County are both in the same building at least.
I mean, we couldn't get that put together. And once again, I think the county put a committee up that didn't want it. The city put a committee up that didn't want it. And amazingly, they found that there was not going to be any savings.
Hey, Charlotte, I want to change the subject just a second. What's going on with the dogs and the cats?
I stay out of it. I think they are getting bids on private pickup, and a formal letter is supposed to have been sent to the city of Cleveland requesting them to come to the table and negotiate or try to negotiate with a new price, I guess, for the city to do it.
Well, Charlotte, with all the city taxes you pay, if you lived in the city, would you be able to drop a dog off at the county shelter?
No.
But you pay taxes for that service, right?
Correct, but I don't live in the city. I have a county address, so I can't drop off at the city, and I can't drop off at the city.
But my point is, if you lived in the city, even though you pay county taxes, you're being excluded from that service currently. Is that correct?
Oh, yes. At SPCA, yes. I cannot drop off
Well,
now
yeah, but
if I had a city address.
Well, that's not a fully accurate statement. I mean, if there were a stray dog at your property in the city, you could call the city to come get that one.
No. The issue is not the city in this one. The issue is the county. The county is collecting taxes. They have a county animal control, but they are not allowing anybody who lives inside the city limits to utilize that service. So, in other words, you're being
she
taxed.
was saying the opposite direction.
No, you're being. It's taxation without representation.
But the county didn't put that stipulation. Actually, the SPCA did it, because when I was on the board originally, we had an open policy and that was our agreement. That was our understanding at that time. That's how we dictated the contract. And in a formal board meeting, SPCA, it did not get in the minutes correctly. We didn't vote on it, but it was understood that we would take city animals because city people were county residents as well, and they pay both taxes.
Right.
So we always took them until the new board took over, and then they stipulated that they would not take city animals anymore from city residents, which is ludicrous.
Now, is the city providing this service also?
They are.
To city residents.
Yes, city residents.
And they're paying a lot more money than the county is.
Right. We're at risk, to be honest, we're at risk of the city folding up operation and saying, fine, let the county do it.
Yeah.
Because the way they've set it up, and I hope they don't do that, but they could.
Well, I mean, if the county's trying to do something about this, am I right or wrong, Charlotte?
Yes, they are.
They are.
All right, so they're asking the city to come meet with them and let's work this out. Now, the problem, from my understanding, is the county thought the city was mismanaging everything, and it was
overcharging,
and it was being overcharged. So now the county went out, they took this, and they did it on an $80,000 bid, which is not enough money. They're a little bit short on that, but now they're trying to get the city to come back in and unite both of them together. Do you think they could do it for $200,000?
I don't think the city will. I think the city will be more like 250, 260, 280. Who knows? I think our biggest issue, and I think the majority of us would tell you, the biggest issue was when we saw the itemized statements from the city and the $8,000 that they paid for dry cleaning. You know, there were different little things on there that I guess a few people were upset about and thought that it was being mismanaged at that time, and it was astronomical, we thought. So.
Now, Charlotte, didn't you all also get kind of caught with, you had all these animal, rights type people that were demanding that the county have a thing, and you all counted on getting a certain level of donations to help with this service, and the donations didn't show up, did they?
Correct.
So
all I know is 2 years ago we had a system that was working and everybody was happy with it. Now we don't.
Yeah, well, we were looking out at the time for the taxpayers' best interest, and we did not feel like the city was managing correctly, I guess. when you see the itemized statement from their expenses, that's when you.
Well, but there was an easy way to handle that. The county could have just taken the service over completely and provided it countywide, and see if they could have done it cheaper.
Could have if they'd done controls.
This is always about power and control, and that's the problem. The taxpayer, it's real easy to be worried about power and control when you're shipping the bill out to someone else, like the taxpayer.
Exactly. Oh, let's raise it on them, and we can do anything you want. I mean, you can have all the services if everybody agrees to a tax increase, but nobody wants to agree to a tax increase.
Good credit, bad credit. Keep that in your mind.
I will.
I mean, when you're spending money on a school, there's no return. When you're spending money,
well, see,
well, I mean, you're going to educate. You're going to educate
that
kids.
Creates a return.
No, I'm talking about a financial return.
I think it is a financial.
No,
return.
I think there's other ways to create financial return to pay for the kid's school.
Yeah,
what he's saying is
I don't think that the building dictates our children's ability to learn. It has no effect on their ability to learn. I went there. It did not affect my ability to learn.
Well, I can tell you, we were close to debt-free in the early to mid-'90s, and we embarked on this building campaign, and the vast majority of the building campaign took mobile-built classrooms and bricked them up and went to bricks and mortar, and that's what we've spent all this $80+ or $100+ million on over the last 20, 25 years.
Charlotte Peak, let me ask you something. If there was such an emergency to fix that school, why didn't we do that before we built that science center over at Bradley High School?
The fine arts.
Yeah,
or fine arts.
There was no urgency for it until everybody started getting new schools, and then all of a sudden they couldn't find enough money to maintain their own buildings. They couldn't fix their roof leaks. They couldn't do this. They couldn't do that. And now we got to tear it all down and build a new one.
Mm-hmm. I've got a good idea for another school.
Why don't they move it?
I've got a good idea for another school, than one of the next probably grammar schools or something. Let's build it over where the old American Uniform building was. Convert that building.
Need another grammar school? I didn't know we were needed.
No, I'm just saying when they read, there'll be a point in time they're going to have another one.
Well, I've heard that our school enrollment was going down, is what I heard. So.
Well, we've never been able to get accurate enrollment numbers, and I think you've got a new administration, a new school board, and I think a lot of this is going to improve as far as the transparency and actually getting accurate numbers. But for years, nobody on the commission could ever get accurate numbers on enrollment, because what they do is, let's say a bunch of kids leave the city system and move to the county system. Well, they go, oh, look, we've had an increase. Well, maybe you had an increase, and maybe you just had some people shifting from one system to the other or one school to the other. So it's always been difficult getting accurate numbers.
The community welcomed the new director of schools, Dr. Cash, last night at a little reception in her honor to welcome her to the community, and I hope that it's the start of a productive discussion with her.
Yeah.
Well, I will say this too. I had mentioned about the alternative school that there wasn't any reason why we couldn't have two. I talked to Dr. Ringstaff this past week, and he was very cordial and receptive about the idea, and I think he began to mull it over a little bit. Whether it's workable or not, I don't know. But he certainly seemed interested. I told him a couple of the county school board members had indicated they would be willing to maybe sit down with the city and see if we could talk about that. So maybe there's a movement in the community to start looking at how do we streamline some of this and how do we protect the taxpayer. I will say too, I got a correction here. The county actually is going to save money by the association with Charleston and collecting that bill, because Charleston apparently is going to cost share on some of that. So it's a savings for the city of Charleston. It's also going to be a savings for the county as well. So that's
best interest of the taxpayer as well.
It's a win-win-win, and why you could do it with one municipality in the county and not get the other one to agree, I don't understand.
Well, I think we ought to push that issue a little bit.
Well, that's a city. You need to push the city on that.
That's what I'm going to say.
Absolutely. We need to give Mike kudos for that. He is a good trustee. He looks out for the bottom line and the best interest of the taxpayers always.
I agree.
Great guy.
He has done a good job. Everybody agrees to that. Charlotte, thank you for calling. Remember, good tax, bad tax.
I remember that. You guys have a good day.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Charlotte.
Bye.
All right. I think we ought to kind of get ready to end this deal. One thing I want to talk about real quick is I just got to notice that Hack the Vote. Cyber experts say ballot machines are going to be easy targets. That's scary to me.
Well, have you read the number of hacks that the government has endured over the last 2 or 3 years? It's frightening, and it's not getting a lot of coverage.
Sure.
I know it. It's getting.
Hey,
it's actually the real war that we're fighting right now. Is that
I've got something interesting along that line. I want to ask Franklin about it. It's more of a philosophical thing. They found out that the ACLU is including tracing software in their emails that they send to Capitol Hill staffers. Any of their links that a staffer clicks on, it embeds a tracking software cookie, and the software apparently is similar to what the Chinese military uses, and they actually included one of these tracking cookies in an email talking about not allowing the government to track your emails. How does that bode, Franklin, for a group like the ACLU to be criticizing the government tracking people and keeping tabs and tracking their emails, and then them to turn around and do the same thing?
Well, first of all, I think that criticism of them would be totally appropriate. I will say, though, there's everybody's worried about the government snooping on you, the NSA stuff and all that. But the fact is, every time you click on an ad for Target or Walmart or any of these places, they're doing the exact same thing to you. And that's the reason why the next 27 times you log onto your computer, amazingly enough, an ad pops up for just the thing you were looking at a week ago online. Corporations all over America are doing that exact same thing. I'm agreeing with you,
I'm agreeing with you, too.
But I'm saying, if we're concerned about privacy, there's a lot more than just the government who's
I agree,
snooping
but
on
my
us.
point here is the corporations, though, aren't out there bragging about how they're
they're very
defending
quietly doing
right.
it.
But
Yeah.
my point is they're not trying to say, "Oh, we're all for your privacy." ACLU,
I agree
pretty
with you,
hypocritical.
That's probably true. That's probably a fair criticism.
By the way, the people that showed up to protest the deep oil rig that was being towed out of the Seattle harbor up to Alaska?
No.
Well, they showed up. They had a kayak line. They were protesting and all. They brought a big barge out. They dropped the concrete anchors, 4,000-pound concrete anchors with big cables on them to anchor the barge, and damaged a coral reef underneath, jeopardized the life of divers because it was a popular dive site, and did about $10,000 worth of damage to the reef and the bay. The oil rig, by the way, did absolutely no damage.
Well, I understand that NAACP leader, Rachel, what's her last name?
Doliaz, I think.
Doliaz or something like that. Might be making some comments pretty soon, but I want to end the show.
You mean I'm going to stay this color?
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable, folks, that she would try to gain momentum by saying that she's a black person rather than being what she really is. Anything else in closing, guys? Anything you want to end up with?
We're out of time.
Stay cool.
It's going to be a hot day. Stay cool. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye. Thanks.
This color?
You've been listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson, John Stanberry, and Franklin Chansey. Catch them again on Whoop FM at noon today and every Wednesday morning from 7:30 to 8:30. Now, back to more music on Whoop FM.